GCSE Business Studies, Unit 4.2, Types of Oral Communication. This short video will cover the main content from this unit. You may find it useful to pause the recording if you need more time to read the information on screen. The specification is what you need to know and shows 4 different types of oral communication that businesses use. These are face-to-face meetings, telephone calls, appraisals, and annual general meetings. We'll now consider these methods of oral communication in more detail. Before we get into that detail, let's just recap briefly the different types of business communication that exist. There's written and electronic communication. Businesses also use images to communicate, for example, through the use of logos. Internal communication is that which takes place within the business, whilst external is that which takes place between the business and those stakeholders from outside. Now let's consider the different types of oral communication. On screen are the 4 types listed in the specification that you need to know. You may want to pause the recording now just to check this list and your understanding of each type. Although quite a straightforward topic area, there are some technical terms here and you may want to ensure that you know the different types. The telephone is an important and very common means of business communication. It benefits from universal coverage. Everywhere and probably everyone in the world uses the telephone. For multinational businesses, those that operate in more than one country, telephone communication is vital. The spread of smartphones is increasing the importance and usefulness of the phone as a means of communication. Also bear in mind that it's a relatively cheap form of business communication, and this is certainly one of the appeals. Appraisal involves a meeting between an employee and their line manager to discuss their performance over the previous period and to set targets for the next period. It's a formal meeting that can be linked to pay. Appraisal can lead to improved motivation and productivity of employees. Remember, productivity means output per worker. If employees feel that their managers are taking an interest in their performance, they're more likely to work hard. The business benefits from this. It all comes from effective oral communication. Bear this in mind as a real benefit for businesses when they get communication right. An annual general meeting, AGM, is a yearly meeting between senior management of a business and all shareholders for the purpose of sharing important information. Shareholders can vote on key decisions, like they're doing in this picture, and can question managers. All shareholders have the right to attend the yearly AGM, and for some businesses that might be many thousands of shareholders. Face-to-face meetings are very common in business. They take many forms, from formal meetings like the one pictured here, to less formal photocopier chats, discussions between staff at social times. Meetings are important for different people in organisations to discuss and to plan. Meetings can be very detailed and involve presentations and wider discussion. You should be familiar with 2 important documents that are used in meetings, an agenda and the minutes. You should be familiar with these from the written communication module. To build on this knowledge, you now need to consider how each type of oral communication is used and what the disadvantages of each are. The table shows the protocols, the rules around each type of oral communication. The blank column is for the limitations of each method, the problems with it. Pause the recording now to read the protocols for each and to see if you can identify 2 limitations for each method. When you've done this, press play again to see how your suggestions compare to ours. How did you do? These suggestions are not the only possible answers. Hopefully you can recognise that telephone communication is a good thing, but that when businesses operating in different countries use the telephone, they have to take into account time differences. At 9 in the morning in London, it's 4 in the morning in New York. There's unlikely to be anyone at their desk. For meetings, there are often time limits. For example, we'll have a 1-hour meeting, but this might not be enough time to get through all of the business. Appraisal A limitation here is that it can be very intimidating for employees. Although it might make them feel that they belong and that the management care about them, it involves a senior colleague making a judgment, and this judgment may affect pay. It's a nerve-wracking thing. There are limitations for each method. Let's move on to consider an exam question around this topic. Now, this looks like a straightforward question, and certainly shouldn't have you quaking in your boots. There are a few things to get right, though. Note that it's an identify question. What does this mean to you? Pause this now and have a think about how you would answer this question. Hopefully, you managed to get a right answer. This student clearly did. Now look at the examiner's comment. They point out, and hopefully you did this, that as an identifier question, there's no need for sentences. One word is often enough. This is important and will help to make sure that you don't waste time in the exam. Final point, oral communication. It's one we take for granted, but it's an essential part of business communication. It's probably the most frequent. In many ways, it might be the most important type of communication that takes place.